So it's been, well, 14 years on PEDs. Dude, you should have seen my comment section. People literally wanted to kill me, apparently. You know, I made my statement after Liver King made a statement, and then I realized during his statement, he was still lying. Steroids increase protein synthesis, so you can get away with less. Steroids also increase your muscle mass, so you need more to sustain that and grow that further.
Whew. Okay. All right, guys. So I'm actually really excited about this podcast. I've been waiting to talk to this man for a long time. And I don't even, I mean, I'm sure he's aware to some extent because I remembered I messaged you like, I don't know if it was like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Asking you, asking you about like what your coaching options were. But I have been watching your content for quite some time now, and dude, I gotta say, like, I don't think I know anyone else in the industry who's just completely upright and transparent about absolutely everything that you've done, everything you've taken, everything that you've learned, and honestly, down to your experience and the breadth of knowledge that you have, it's freaking mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
Thanks so much,
like,
man.
It's
it's just my time to kind of give back, you know, because I've been a part of the sport for such a long time, but kind of on the back end, you know, because I, like, when you live in Holland or Thailand, you're kind of unknown. Because the fitness industry is mostly in America, right? And now a little bit in Dubai. So I figured, you know, I got all this knowledge. I better just share it on the internet, because then at least a younger guy doesn't have to go through all the drama that I had to go through trying to piece it together when I was like, you know, 26 years old, getting started with PEDs and everything before that when I was still drug free. It's, it was very confusing for me in the beginning. So I'm at a point where I'm just wanting to give back. And for that, you have to be super transparent and open, sometimes to, you know, my own detriment, unfortunately. But it's like, it's very beneficial to see, or it's good to see that all the young guys, you know, out there, the next generation are benefiting from all of it. And so you know, we talked about 2 years ago because you wanted to do a contest prep, I believe.
Well, to be honest, I don't think I was planning on a contest prep when I hit you up, but I was more so intrigued by how you really focus a lot on just overall wellness, mental health, organ health, and everything when it comes down to bodybuilding. And I don't mean to, like, I'm not trying to throw any shade to bodybuilder coaches out there, but fact of the matter is the coaches worry the most about their business and about their name, right?
Yeah.
And their number one thing, as you know, is to post their best clients. So
transformation pics is the name of the game, man. It's the name of the game. And it's funny because these guys, they never post the before and after blood work or the before and after organ imaging, right? Exactly. Some guys don't even ask for it. So let's be honest, they probably don't have it to post. So that's what always annoyed me, because I know it's all marketing. And then, but what about internal? You know, I'm wondering, did this guy go from like healthy to super unhealthy, or did he stay healthy all the way through? So that's why I was kind of joking with these guys, like, you know, post the full story, show me the blood work. It's so at least I try to do it the best I feel is possible. And then a lot of people are learning now to do more blood work. So all the TRT clinics are very happy with me because they get a lot of business this way.
I bet.
Yeah, they do.
That leads me to a question I really want to ask you, actually, about one of my friends. His name is Josh, and he's kind of known in the industry a little bit about his quote unquote supposedly natty status that he claims natty. But before we go on to that, though, I want to like get people to have like at least a little idea of who you are if they haven't seen your content. So how did the Chronicle of Steve begin? Like, what started the Steve arc in bodybuilding?
So, man, Steve is like a little bit of an alias. My real name is Stefan. But when I came to Thailand, nobody could pronounce it here, right? Stefan is a Dutch name. So Steve is very American. So when I came to Thailand, nobody could pronounce my name. They would say Satefan, which made my ears bleed. Yeah, horrible. Made my ears bleed. So after a while, I realized, you know what? I'm going to go with Steve after the bouncer Steve on the Jerry Springer show. Because those guys, if you might not remember this, but when Jerry Springer was very popular, he had a bouncer. His name was Steve. And then every time there was like an argument, people were fighting, the whole audience would go, Steve, 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 Steve. And at that time, we were playing soccer, you know, at school. So every time I would get the ball, they would go, Steve, Steve, Steve. So this is basically where the name stems from. And Thai people are, can pronounce that name much, much easier than Stefan. So that's where the Steve came from. But dude, I started training at 15 years old. My mom signed me up for the gym. Yeah, 15 years old. So, back then we had the muscle mags, fitness and health or health and fitness and Flex magazine and all natural muscular development, which I actually got featured in a couple months ago only in April magazine. So that's, last month. Yeah, I got featured. It only took 25 years of bodybuilding. Yeah, thank you. So back then, dude, the information was paper thin, and I had to go to the library to piece together training, and because the internet was, very, very small. So I spent so much time trying to piece everything together. And then, when I got older and the internet got bigger, it was easier to find that stuff. And now that the internet is huge with social media, and then you can have your own website, I figured, time to share. But in the meantime, I did drug-free bodybuilding for 10, 11 years. And after that, I wanted to see what what the fuss was all about, because literally everybody around me was taking steroids, and I was doing a lot of research. So when I was 26, I finally took the plunge, and now I'm almost 40. So it's been, 14 years on PEDs. So now I'm close to 40 years old, and from 26 to 40 years old, that's basically the time that I started experimenting with PEDs. And of course, I've taken time off. But literally in my life, I just realized this when I was doing a blood work video. I've done 5 cycles in my life. So the first one was like 14 weeks. Yeah, just 5. So the first one was 14 weeks. Then the second one was 5 months. So that's 2 blasts and a cruise. 2 months on a blast, 1 month on a cruise, and 2 months on a blast, give or take. And then the third cycle lasted almost 10 years.
Whoa! No way.
Yeah, but this I did blasting and cruising.
That's crazy,
right? Yeah,
bro.
I know, because everybody on the forums and the people that I knew at the time, they're like, "Why are you coming off? Nobody cares about that. You're going to lose all your gains. So you do blasting and cruising, right? High dosages, TRT or TRT for bodybuilders. It's like 250 milligrams test per week, and so I did that for 10 years. Yeah, I got up to 250 pounds, about 118 kilos at the end. Very uncomfortable. And now I'm a much leaner, much healthier 92 kilos. So that's about 210 pounds, I think. Dude, and I feel so much better. Of course, but being strong in the gym, forget about it. I'm nothing like I used to be. But that's just, how it goes, right? When you get older. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's part of it.
I feel like it's part of it when you get older, but it's also just part of the cycle of taking PEDs. You try as hard as you want to get as big as possible. But the truth of the matter is, the moment you decide to stop doing cycle protocols and everything, you don't really have the androgens to upkeep a lot of your muscle mass.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And right now I'm doing a fertility protocol because I want to get my wife pregnant. So I'm just using HCG and recombinant FSH to kind of stimulate testosterone production and semen production. And even though I dropped 10 kilos, I mean, the physique is, honestly, it looks better than being that bulky, Or maybe it's because we live in this Instagram world now. We got crazy physiques like you and Joe Statics and Andre Drio and so you scroll through Instagram, you're like, man, I wish I looked like this guy instead of being this bulky bodybuilder. So now I'm slowly getting more into this Instagram physique, which is certainly a lot more marketable, besides not having any hair, right? But, maybe at one point it will grow back.
I thought you didn't have I thought you didn't really have hair issues though.
No, I don't. No, I trim it. Here in Asia, it's so hot, man. In Thailand, it's...
Oh, you just buzz it because it's hot.
Yeah, gotcha. Just buzzing. Yes, I buzz everything. And so this is literally the only hair that I have. Too many details. Yeah, too much details, I know. So
it looks good, man.
Yeah, thank you. So, and I have a motorbike. So if you put some hair gel, if I had a hairstyle like yours, which I can do if I want to, right? I have a full head of hair. And you put a little bit of, mousse or spray or hair gel, and you put the motorcycle helmet on, the hairstyle is ruined. So I figured, I just figured, you know what, I'm just going to trim it, and it looks okay. Yeah, good enough. Good enough.
No, you rock it, bro. I think it goes along with the whole Steve the Bouncer look.
Exactly. Exactly. So I see, you've been on Instagram for such a long time. And I was wondering, like, what your background is, because are you first generation American, or did your parents move from somewhere to America? You know, have you traveled to your home country, or your home country, sort of say?
Right.
I was wondering.
So yeah, my parents are originally from the Philippines, and I did 23andMe, and I've got a little bit of mixture of a little bit of Chinese in there, and then we're also pretty confident that there's some Japanese in my dad's family as well. But they lived and grew up in the Philippines, and then moved to America around the time that my dad was like doing his master's, and then what was it? I don't remember what else. And then my mom was also here as well, and then they met around that time. Okay. So I was born in America.
Okay. And are both your parents Filipino, or you're just your dad?
They're both Filipino. They both they both moved to the US for school, for college.
Oh, right. And they met at school. That's cool. That's a cool story.
They met at somebody's wedding, but yeah, essentially around that time period though, of them being in university.
That's fun. And have you been to the Philippines yourself?
Yeah, I have, and it's honestly I love going because it's always a great little refresh of perspective.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a different life, right, compared to the Western world. It's so that's why I like Thailand. You know, it's so different. You know, but then once in a while you need to kind of get out. So that's why I try to go to the Western world. You know, once every couple of years. So this year I'll go to the Mr. Olympia again. Did you go last year? I didn't see you there.
Yeah, I went to Olympia last year.
Really? Oh man, I didn't see you there.
There's a lot of people. It's definitely hard to like run into people there for sure. I think I was spending a lot of time at Transcend's booth, which is also another HRT company.
Right. Oh, right. So you're probably at the booth all the time. Yeah, I was walking around just meeting fans and been going from booth to booth because it was my first time. So I didn't really know who's where at what times, and I didn't really check because it's weird. Like I was walking around like past the Jay Cutler booth, for example, you know, then I walked past the line just to see how big the line was. And then I stopped every couple of steps because, you know, people were also following me and they wanted to have a chat. So I basically entertained the entire Jay Cutler line just to talk to my own fans. It's pretty funny. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Yeah.
I
would
love
definitely
that place,
be one of them there.
Yeah, I'll go again this year.
Olympia?
Yeah, I'll go again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be able to meet up there because I'm definitely trying to go as well.
Right.
Go and then also at some point step on the stage. Hopefully.
Yeah. So what are your competition plans? Like I know you got your pro card, right?
Right.
Your IFBB pro card.
So at the moment the focus is just on bulking because in the last 3 or 4 years or so, you know, I focus on my image for social media, and just like you were talking about earlier, it requires a lot of maintaining a lower calorie intake to maintain those shreds, you know, low body fat percentage. And so I was never in a surplus in the last like 3.5 years or so. So, you know, I also really cared a lot about my health. And so I kept my cycles as minimum as possible. Most of the time I was really running TRT because I found like when I was on TRT, just like you said, I would actually feel better and I would look better. In my opinion, I would look better. Like the physique was a little bit more natural looking, and then my face always looked way more aesthetic.
Oh
yeah,
like
slim.
10 times.
You could see the structure, right?
Yeah,
not bloated. Maybe like probably no acne or oiliness whatsoever. You know, it just looks so nice, and you're youthful too. You look youthful when you're just running TRT, or you're just you know, not on anything at all. So I would really try to preserve that look as long as possible. But then the moment I start blasting, I'm like, wow, I look great. But then towards the end of the blast, my face gets all freaking bloated, and like I'm starting to like see my bags under my eyes. Like it's just it's crazy, bro. I look like I'm dying. It's just
I know. I used to have the same thing. Like you're walking around large and in charge, and then you look in the face in the mirror, and your face is like, I don't know, it's not very appealing at all, you know.
No.
And luckily for me, I wasn't on social media at all back then, so I could get away with it. But now, you know, people will point it out. Oh, you look tired. You look full. You look fat. You know, it's the comments sometimes. Yeah. So I think a lot of people don't understand how much, you know, effort goes into this social media, especially if you're an influencer, you know, and you try to market yourself to millions of followers. Like how much effort goes into that? And I think the effort is the more than TRT, right? But that's not the case. A lot of guys are just cruising on TRT or a little low dose of Anavar and maybe some other compounds.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's all like starving. all the time, and then trying to have a good workout together. Yeah, I mean, I know, because you diet for a whole year straight. I mean, you're not really strong anymore, but I still have to look strong on Instagram. Yeah, it's tough, man. People don't understand, I think. And then they point their fingers. Oh, he's on tren. No. No.
Yeah.
These guys have no idea. So now you're bulking. How's that going?
It's going surprisingly well. Dude, I'm so happy right now that I could eat this much food. I'm not gonna say anything before it happens. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything correctly, but I've seemed to gain, like, I woke up at 181 today, and I started around 173. I've been 173 pounds for the last 3.5-4 years. So, and when I see my physique, I feel like I've only gained like a couple percent in body fat. I really don't feel like I've gained more than like a few pounds here or there. So, I don't know. Good. We'll see how it goes though. But
so how heavy do you want to get before you start dieting for a show? Like 200 pounds, 210, or that's too high for your height?
It's I'm 5'8", so it's kind of hard to really determine exactly where I want to be. But I know I spoke with a coach, and we both kind of agreed that if I wanted to step on the classic stage at my height, I would need to be around 190, which is definitely a good, at least like 20 pounds of lean mass, which is a lot.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, but you have the physique for it, man. You got that crazy taper, and your quads are still flaring, Like, I think your physique would be wasted in men's physique, but I think it would shine in classic. Yeah, I think so, because you got the lower body to match. So, why hide it under board shorts? Just show it all. But that means you'll have to get up a little bit heavier than you are now.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
And those guys that compete in classic, they're high level. They don't care about staying in shape on Instagram. They go all in. So, you have to. Yeah, I talked about this with Joe Statics quite a bit, who wants to compete in men's physique, right? And then he does shows, but he still cares about his online look. And even though he pushes it a little bit, or at least for the last show, he realized, these guys are on such a different level than him. And that's men's physique, and he's shredded year round. So I think at one point in your position with such a large following, you have to decide, do I want to really pursue this classic physique look and go through it during the off season being way bigger than is kind of marketable? Or do I want to stay marketable? Yeah, but you'll figure that out as you go along.
That's the thing, is I kind of already decided. That's why I'm competing, is because I decided, like, fuck marketable. I've been doing it for 3 years, and now I want to do something that's for myself. Like, I really want, like, the only reason I really ever did bodybuilding in the first place is because I want to compete in the sport, because I just have a passion for the sport, right? Not because I want to like look good for chicks or look good for other dudes, It was just because I fucking want to compete in the sport. So. I've seen my engagement drop in a lot of like areas, especially in that audience that pertains to lifestyle. But it's a hit that I took on purpose, because this is the route that I want to go. So
yeah, and I think the people in the fitness industry appreciate it more. We love to see the journey and the progression, and if you document it well, like going from 170 something pounds to like 200 pounds, man, and keeping your shape. Keeping those crazy proportions and then stepping on stage. I think the core audience would love to see it. I would love to see it. Right? I think you would look fucking crazy on stage. And if you hit a couple good classic poses, people would be like, oh, holy shit, you really delivered. Because I think you can get super shredded. Like, you had shredded glutes a couple of weeks ago, right?
That was a couple of weeks ago. It was a while ago.
No?
Yeah, it was a good while ago.
Yeah, I just followed it. It was a while ago, yeah. So, but at least you can. So, getting those shredded glutes back is just a matter of dieting, with all that new muscle mass. Yeah. So how long are you giving yourself? Like, how many months?
Well, I'm giving myself as long as it takes, because I want to make sure that I'm as healthy as possible. But at the same time, you got that little voice inside your head being like, God, I got to get as big as possible, as fast as possible.
Yeah,
it's a push and pull.
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. Yeah, give yourself some time, man. I mean, the longer you take, the more healthy you can stay, because you don't need to run higher dosages. And of course, if you can control your calories, then you can stay reasonably lean. And then by the time you do decide to diet, you only need maybe 8 weeks, 10 weeks to really get peeled. So, then the dieting process isn't that crazy either. I see a lot of guys that want to rush into it, but that's usually not the way to do it, because that's how you get a bubble gut and thick obliques. And then you step on stage, you're like, what happened to his waist? Bro. So
the bubble gut, I always suspected that it was from a use of GH mixed with insulin and IGF-1 use.
Yeah.
An abuse of all three, of course. Is that what you perceive?
It's true.
Well?
Plus copious amounts of food, like copious amounts of food. Yeah, enough food to kind of feed a starving village. Yeah. No, it's a lot of food. So, nowadays people are a lot more wary of their intestinal health. They do a little bit of probiotics, and they do occasional fast, and they do maybe an elimination diet. But back then, in the 90s, 2000s, people didn't know about that. So they would just slam insulin and growth hormone and eat like 1,000 grams of carbs per day. And eventually that all gets backed up in the intestinal tract. You have two growth agents, insulin, growth hormone, and then maybe IGF-1. And then a lot of food, and it's all going through the liver. So you get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you get visceral fat buildup, you get growth of the organs, the liver, the intestinals, the stomach, the spleen, man, everything grows. So there's nowhere to go, right? The muscles can grow outside, but the organs, they can only grow in the stomach area, and it's just going to stick your stomach out. Now, you can notice that the guys that competed a lot back then, even though they took a lot of drugs, because they were competing so much, they didn't eat so much, right? So Milo Sarcev, for example, he's been a little bit more open on some of the podcasts that he's on.
Right.
And I think he did the same, high insulin dosages and high steroid dosages and high growth hormone, just like everybody else. But he did 12 shows a year. So he was, like you, always in a caloric deficit. That's why his stomach never blew out. But these guys that did 1 show per year and ate a lot of food and then had adequate time to build up this visceral fat and perhaps fat in the liver and AFLD, I think those guys had a hard time getting rid of it because they don't diet it. Yeah.
So you think a lot of that is visceral fat then?
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, you can easily see it on an ultrasound. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm trying to remember ice baths. That burns what kind of fat? Brown fat?
Brown fat, yeah. But it can also help with visceral fat if you do it in a fasted state, obviously. Okay. So, of course, the ice bath, for a big bodybuilder, they're probably going to be wary of it because, it kind of blunts your recovery process if you do it 4 hours within training. So all the bodybuilders are like, I can't take diindolylmethane because it's an androgen receptor blocker, and I can't take vitamin C because it blocks the post-exercise stress response, and now I won't make any gains, and I can't do ice baths. So a little bit of the meathead we need to hammer out of the bodybuilding community. And you see that the new guys, like, what's his name? The British guy, he does ice baths every day and he looks great. He's a huge bodybuilder, but his stomach is kind of flat. So there's so many things that we can look into nowadays to kind of keep ourselves healthy. And ice bath, I think there's a place. It's a little bit cumbersome, but is it going to fix your bubble gut? Probably not.
Right. That kind of reminds me of a berberine, where everyone's scared that berberine's going to suppress mTOR from that.
Yeah, mTOR and the lower IGF-1
pathway.
Yeah.
Right. But it seems like I've been it's like you never want to look on like Reddit and like these other forums but at the same time, whenever you do, it does tend to be like a really good account of at least having some kind of anecdotal evidence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know. I just from what I've seen, it just seems that berberine.
Yeah, I want to see the people behind those posts because like, are they like high level people in the fitness industry, or just some random dude that doesn't really eat healthy and doesn't really do fasted cardio and take care of themselves?
Right, you never know.
Because I suspect that it's usually the guys that don't following the lifestyle that get side effects. Because listen, everything takes a toll, right? But if you keep yourself healthy, by doing all these little things that you need to do, then something like berberine or vitamin C, dude, it's not going to make a dent. Even a decent dose of tren, it's not really going to make a dent. But if you do that with a shitty lifestyle, of course, blood pressure goes up, right? mTOR goes down and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I always say post the pictures, post the blood work, and then we can see what you actually look like instead of these anecdotal reports. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not too worried about berberine at all.
I agree with this. I'm not trying to say that I'm like, oh, I do so great with my lifestyle and everything. But I do notice that the thing that seems to keep me from taking more PEDs doesn't end up being my blood work, because my blood work's always like pretty dang good. It always tends to be like the amount of hair I'm losing, or what happens with the changes of appearance and face. It's just funny, like what ends up limiting you when you're actually just taking care of yourself, I guess.
Yeah, I think everybody has to set like a limit on what they can take, right? And whether that's side effect wise or cosmetic appearance changing wise, you got to limit yourself. Like for me, it was always the blood work, right? If I don't feel comfortable with the blood work, or I get like sleep apnea or something like that, then I would quit. So I never got sleep apnea. My blood work was always manageable, so I just kept going. Right? The hair loss, I didn't really care. The facial changes, okay. Bodybuilding is from the neck down. Right? Doesn't include. It's not face building. It's bodybuilding. So I didn't really care about having this giant head all the time, or at least during the off season. But of course, man, if your business revolves around looking good online, right, 24/7, then yes, of course, the hair loss and the facial changes, that you just have to limit what you take and what you do, and I think a lot of people respect you for it, because if you look good in the beginning and then you change to something that's hideous, which we've seen in the fitness space quite a bit, right? These guys start up looking very, very healthy and looking good. And then within 5 years, they look absolutely horrendous. They look like smokers because they have so much oxidative stress. And then you see that people are like, ooh, he used to look good. And that's the last thing you want to hear, in this space. Oh, he used to look good. I don't know. Yeah. It would hurt. It's not good for your business, because there's always 10 other dudes that look 10 times better, and they'd rather move there and use their discount codes, So you got to stay marketable. So I think if you limit yourself in the PEDs and just slowly go up in weight, you should keep your physique and just get bigger overall.
So speaking of that, what are your thoughts on the bulking cycles used for bodybuilding on the pro stage? And I guess people's perceptions of that, because there are a lot of people that think, like bodybuilders are just going to take multiple grams of gear consistently. And then you also hear bodybuilders say, no, I don't ever take more than 500 grams of test, or 500 milligrams of test, and then 500 milligrams of test, and then like another add-on or something.
Right. So so you have to read between the lines a little bit. That's and then to be honest, like it's all over the place. There's guys that running like multiple grams of gear, maybe 3 grams, 4 grams, 5 grams even during a contest prep. And there's other guys that only run 2 grams. I mean, I've seen the blood work. I've talked with these guys, and they're open about what they're taking, and I can put it together. This is their cycle. They detail it, into extent, all these little nuances, especially during contest prep. And I look at the blood work, and I'm like, I've seen so much blood work, and it makes sense. So I know that they're not bullshitting me. And then other guys, it's very obvious that they're bullshitting me because their dosages are low, but their blood work is horrendous. So then you have like, you either have great genetics to grow, but horrible genetics to keep yourself healthy, or you're lying about what you're taking, right? You just want me to fix you, but you don't want to be honest. And then there's other guys who run, like 5 grams of gear, and their blood work is great. And you're like, how the hell is this possible? But they have a high tolerance for drugs. It only produces muscle mass, and they don't really get any side effects, so they can get away with it. So it's literally all over the place. But it's very easy to tell. The guys that don't burn out after their 40s, those guys took low dosages. And the guys who are retiring around 40, or they start to look progressively worse, the stomach gets bigger and the arms and the legs get smaller, those guys pushed it really, really hard. So all you have to do is wait, and then time will tell. And you can easily see that now, the guys that are retiring around 40 with small arms and big guts, those guys pushed it, without naming any names. But yeah, I think pro bodybuilding is reserved for a select few. And most pro bodybuilders will know if they have good genetics within the first cycle, because they need to blow up on an AMPA test. If they don't blow up on an AMPA test, like literally blow up over 250 pounds, then it's pro bodybuilding isn't for you. Yeah. Because you need the genetic response, you know?
Right. What about for off season, not for prep?
Okay, so during off season, you know, the smart bodybuilders, they run a substantially lower dose, maybe a little bit of test, a little bit of Nandrolone for the joints, some Primo or Boldenone, and usually during the off season, you know, you cycle the insulin and cycle the growth hormone because, you know, the dosages can be quite high, especially on the insulin, but the food intake is also quite high. So this is usually the time that most bodybuilders can kind of hide away. They can get, you know, glazed over with water retention, a little bit of fat on the lower back, and you know, you just wear the hoodie and the long baggy shorts or sweatpants, and then nobody would know, right, that you're fat and hairy and you know, running copious amounts of insulin. so it doesn't really matter during
growing beards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to hide the lower chin. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, we're on to you, bro. So yeah, so during the off season, and that's actually the way you should do it, right? You should hide away like that, because if you stay in shape the entire off season and shred it with veins everywhere, then that probably means that you're running a decent amount of drugs, and you know you want to cycle down. You want to do a cruise and a blast for the competition, unless you're trying to gain size. But of course, then you take a year or two off to really pack on the size. But yeah, again, some guys might run 500 milligrams, but besides that, they might use 80 IUs of insulin, and they might use 10 to 12 IUs of growth hormone. So they say 500 tests. That's not a lie, but it's a half truth, because they forgot to mention the copious amounts of insulin and the copious amounts of growth hormone and the IGF-1 and whatever else that they're running. So it's half truths. So you have to read between the lines. A little bit. 500 tests is not going to give you a face that's this big with, you know, the cranial protrusions here and there and here. So,
right.
Yeah, we're on to you. We know what's going on.
So even for like, say, classic physique, would you say that insulin and GH is still truly a game changer in like the pro bodybuilding world?
I think so. Yeah, I think all of them run a little bit of insulin and growth hormone. Maybe only insulin during the carb up, right? They have to make weight. And if you have to suck down to make weight, you know, 10, 15 pounds, then yeah, you might need a little bit of insulin to come back from that. You know, if you only have 2 days to load, or you need to do a growth hormone load. But, you know, some of the classic physique competitors you can see by their forearms and their nose, and because those are also receptive to growth hormone, right? Some of these guys' forearms are like Popeye size. So you know they're on a decent amount of growth hormone, because it's very rare for that to happen without growth hormone. Again, genetic response plays a key in that. But I do think it's a part. And maybe in the beginning you use a little bit of insulin and growth hormone just to get the size and the density. And then later on you take that out to get the weight down and the hardness, right? And the real grittiness that you need for the stage. So I do like insulin and growth hormone because it allows you to use less steroids. So you get this synergistic effect. You know, you get a little bit of test, Primo, whatever else. And then you can literally half the dose by adding a little bit of insulin and adding a little bit of growth hormone. And this way you don't get this stress of high dosages of testosterone, Primo, Anavar,
right.
Or Trenbolone, for example. So I like the synergy between multiple compounds. But again, you know, if you're very, very big and maybe a little bit puffy, then yes, the insulin needs to come out. And yes, the growth hormone needs to come out. But dude, when you compete at the Olympia, there's no secrets, right? Everything goes. Everything goes.
Yeah. Which is really unfortunate with me personally, just thinking about how I would love to compete in classic physique. But I have this thing inside me that just tells me I really don't ever want to take insulin. I just don't want to risk the use of insulin. So I have a lot of clients that took insulin, right? And they take a low dose insulin, maybe 10, 15 IUs basal insulin. That's Lantus, that works for 24 hours. So it doesn't peak. It doesn't make you risk hypoglycemia. So you don't have super low blood glucose levels forcing you to eat the fridge empty. Okay.
So you just get sustained release above what you produce naturally, because, you know, naturally you produce maybe 5 to 10 IUs of insulin over the day, even when you don't eat, just to control your blood glucose levels. And these guys run that for maybe 9 months. They put on another 5 pounds of actual real muscle tissue, maybe another 5 pounds of water retention, right? Maybe a little bit of fat. And then the main difference is that their steroid dosages are a lot lower. Of course, they control their diet super, super tightly because once you're on insulin, right, you need to eat like it's your job, right? You can't deviate because every time you eat a little bit extra, that's body fat, complementary. So you have to be super careful. And then, these guys are so focused and meticulous that their waist doesn't blow out. If anything, they gain more size and they're healthier because they can use less gear. So don't be too scared of it, but try to get as far as you can without it, obviously, because it's another variable in the picture. And then if you feel like, you know what, I'm so close, I'm second place to qualify for the Mr. Olympia and I need a little bit more size, but I don't want to take more gear. Yeah, we'll need to do a phone call and I'll guide you through it. Or you go with a coach that is very experienced with insulin, like Milos, for example.
That's scary.
Yeah. Milos is very experienced. And he's helped a couple of classic physique.
Yes, he's very experienced. So,
right. He might put you on 50 IUs, maybe more than you feel comfortable with.
Right. Yeah, probably. Right. And I saw his program back in the day and it was just mind-blowing to me, like 1,000 carbs and like 30 grams of fat. I'm assuming in order to compensate for the use of how much insulin he was using. Do you find that's quite necessary though?
Things have changed.
Do you find that that's quite necessary, that drastic difference in carbs and fats when consuming insulin, just to try to ensure that you're not absorbing that much fat?
Yeah. So, usually the fat intake is low because the growth hormone intake is quite high. And of course, growth hormone, when you're on a decent amount of insulin, of course, that shuttles all the carbohydrates into skeletal muscle. But when you take growth hormone, this liberates some fat from adipose tissue. This is why these guys are always lean, right? The pro bodybuilders, they're watery, but they're lean. So when you take growth hormone, maybe 2 IUs a couple times per day, you always have a little bit of fat in the bloodstream because this is coming from your body fat. And it's better to sustain insulin sensitivity if you reduce your fat intake during this time and just shift all the fat to the end of the day. So this fat in the bloodstream doesn't interfere with your carbohydrate absorption and your insulin sensitivity. So this is a way around it. So this is why they say low fat works, because the high doses of growth hormone would otherwise give them insulin resistance. So this is how they kind of bypass that effect. Now, later on, with guys like John Meadows and Dr. Scott Stevens and a lot of more intelligent people in the sport, they understand that you need to increase your fat intake. It might be better just to have a carbless breakfast. So you have protein, fats, and vegetables, right, to start the day. And then you do all your stuff. Then you take your insulin and your carbs and your growth hormone, that kind of stuff. So things are evolving and things are changing. But dude, there's so many ways to... Yeah, switch it up. Yeah. So there's just so many ways to get it done. And then that's why everybody kind of does something different, because every body has a different body. And you just got to work with, what works for you.
And that would be fat in the beginning of the day, but then, controlling the fat for the rest of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. So you have a little bit of a fat, this healthy fat in the morning. This is kind of to bypass elevated cortisol levels, which, wake you up. And of course, taking some coffee will worsen that. And, you go on Instagram, you check your DMs, you're like, then your cortisol is really high, So it's just a kind of way to kind of bypass that. So you have a carbless breakfast to mitigate the cortisol. And then the second meal onwards, maybe you have your workout after the second meal. Okay, you have your carbs around the workouts, maybe a little bit afterwards with some insulin, start growing. And, that's kind of a way to go around that. And or otherwise you take all your fats before bed. You take your, if you train early, you take your carbs early, your insulin early, and then you let all of that metabolize and clear from your system. You take all of your fat before bed to kind of recover, because you need fat for recovery. And then you get it done that way. And I've guided clients through both aspects. And some people do better with fat in the morning, and some people do better with fat in the evening. And then you just have to adjust, Again, it's a full-time job, especially at the pro level, because, you eat a gram of rice too much, and that might mean the difference between first place and second place. So that's how tough it is, Yeah, that's how tough it is.
Would you say there's any point in this protocol, fat in the morning or fat at night, no fat during the day, if you weren't taking insulin?
No, I would rather have people space it out. Yeah, okay. I would rather have people space it out. Yeah.
It's interesting. There are some coaches out there I've seen that will give the the same protocols to those that aren't even taking the same drugs. I've seen this for sure. Like the whole keeping the fat at night, but then not really throughout the day. But then this person isn't taking insulin or even GH. And I've always wondered, like, why? Like, why? You know what I mean? And I think it's just
they don't know. That's why
they don't know.
They don't know any better. They know
what the purpose
how it works.
of it is.
Yeah, they don't. They know how the body works on copious amounts of drugs. Or on drugs in general, but then if the drugs come out, they don't know how to manipulate it. So that's the problem with a lot of these coaches. They started their bodybuilding journey taking drugs from day one, and even though they understand how the body responds on drugs, they don't understand how the body responds without certain drugs in the picture. Right? That's why all the protocols are pretty much the same, and then they adjust from there. They don't start teaching these guys how to use particular drugs step by step, and then try to get away with it as little as possible while optimizing the diet first, which I think is the foundation of this sport. But, people are in a rush, right? They want results tomorrow. So you get the diet and the protocol right away. And people don't want to undergo a year of kind of figuring it out what works best for you, for them anymore. Everybody's in a rush to get to the pro stage and win. So that makes it complicated for the coaches as well. Like I remember at the tail end of my coaching, everybody wanted to do contest prep. Nobody wanted to sign up for 6 months or 1 year of off season so we could figure it out and then do a prep. No, prep right away. Right? I got 3 months left. Get me shredded. Okay, here's your stack. Good luck.
There's a lot of studies out there when it pertains to protein consumption, and obviously these are all on normal people that aren't taking, your average person that isn't taking PEDs or isn't competing for the bodybuilding stage. So since we were just discussing this, how much protein do you believe that bodybuilders really need? And I'm asking this particularly because there is so much there's just so much variance out there. Like you have bodybuilder coaches that are giving people 300 to 350 grams of protein, and then you have Chris Bumstead saying you don't need any more than 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Yeah. So it depends on what you're taking and what else you're eating. So to simplify it, right, steroids increase protein synthesis, so you can get away with less. But steroids also increase your muscle mass, so you need more to sustain that and grow that further. So if anything, whether you're on steroids or not, you can go by, weight or grams per body weight, and whether that's 1 gram up until 2.5 grams per kilo of body weight, or maybe even more, maybe even 3 grams per kilo of body weight, because I do know guys that do very well on 300 grams of protein when they're like 100 kilos or 225 pounds, whether they take steroids or not. But it also depends how much carbs and how much fat you're taking, because the body will use something for energy, right? Whether that's fat, carbs, or protein. And usually it uses carbs first, then fats, and then protein, not the middle finger, sorry. Then protein. So if you have low carbs and low fats, then your body is going to use a little bit of protein for energy. So during contest prep, when your calories are down, protein needs to come up to compensate for the lack of carbs and the lack of fat that you now have. Otherwise, it will take the protein from skeletal muscle. So you take protein as a muscle preserving effect. And that works better with steroids, but it will still work quite effectively if you're drug free, right? Protein is muscle protein sparing. So dietary protein is muscle protein sparing. Now, on the opposite end, carbohydrates are also protein sparing, which whether that's dietary protein or muscle protein, carbohydrates spare those protein sources. So if your carbohydrate intake is high during the off season, you can bring your protein intake down as little as 1 gram per 1 kilogram or half a gram per 1 pound of body weight. So a 100 kilo guy, 225 pound bodybuilder can get away with 100 grams of protein if his carbs are high enough. Just 100 grams per day. Because you don't use all of that anyway for muscle tissue. You'll be happy if you synthesize, maybe 5 grams of dietary protein into new muscle tissue. Because that would be, quite a bit already over the month. If it's 30 grams, it's even better. And like how much muscle can you gain realistically in a month? Maybe a kilo, 2 kilos. you know? So, and that's not 100% muscle protein tissue. So, you know, depending on how much calories you eat, how many carbs you eat, how much drugs you take, it can range anywhere between 1 gram up to 3.5 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. And that's 2 grams per, what is it, half a gram per pound? Yeah, up until 1.5 grams a pound. Man, I'm not into pounds. It's hard to, it's hard, all these fucking different measuring units. Yeah, so, you know, start looking there. And again, you know, if you track your diet with MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or, you know, the good old fashioned way in an Excel sheet, you know, you look in the mirror and if you see that you're getting flat or a little bit stringy, okay, maybe your carbs need to come up. And if the carbs don't make you look any fuller, then maybe the protein need to go up. Yeah. So this is why coaching or self-guidance is so important from week to week. Have a look at your physique, see what the diet and the drugs are doing, and then adjust. And then do it another week and another week, another week. And then after a couple years of doing that, you're kind of a pro with your own physique. Right. And then, you know, and then you need a little bit of help during contest prep because that's when, you know, all the drugs come in and the stress and the worry, you know, and the insecurity comes to water. Like, oh, are my quads big enough? You know, am I shredded enough? That kind of stuff. That's why we have coaches, right? To kind of set you straight.
Yeah.
Yeah. But during the off season, most people can do it by themselves, man. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Sure.
So speaking of coaching, if you don't mind me asking this, you were coaching the Liver King, or at least projected to coach him, right? So
he signed up, right? And then it took me about a month or a couple of weeks to get his program out the door because that was towards the tail end of my coaching career. And, you know, honestly, after having such a bad experience, well, not really a bad experience, but after letting him go, I realized that I really didn't want to coach anymore. So Liver King was basically my last bodybuilding client. So, you know, we had a consultation. He seemed like a super driven and nice guy. So I decided to take him on. And then, you know, it took him some time to send the details in. It took me some time to write him his program, which, you know, when I went through his questionnaire, I'm like, man, this guy's doing so many things wrong. But I felt confident that I could fix it, right? if he just wanted to, like, make the changes. So I wrote him his diet. I sent it to him. He wanted to do his own training because he had his own specific training. So I never sent him a training protocol just to shove it in his face. Like, your diet and your protocols is terrible, you know, like this has got to change. So much simple sugar, so much saturated fat, you know, and his blood work was not really great. Actually, it was quite bad at that time. So I'm like, okay, you need more blood work. You need organ imaging, you know, you need to come down. We need to clean you out. And he didn't want to do it. So after you know, 2 or 3 weeks of like bad communication and red flags and him not really wanting to make the changes, which I feel are important for health, I refunded him the money and let him go, you know? Wow. So that's basically my extent of the working with him, 2 to 3 weeks. And even that, it wasn't really working together because we were barely in touch, you know? So, and then of course the Liver King persona really got big. And, you know, I was talking with Derek on the back end about, you know, I mean, the bad publicity that this guy was giving to the fitness industry, you know, telling people not to do blood work and that people on steroids are subprimal. I mean, people use this for medical purposes, for fuck's sake, you know, and you don't need to brush your teeth and wipe your ass and this kind of stuff. It turned into a complete cartoon character, right? So I told Derek, I said, listen, I got these emails. I got these cheeseburgers, man. I got these emails. And he's got some more evidence. So I told him, just use it. But, you know, ideally you leave me out of it. But the internet detectives are good, man. Yeah, they figured it out in 5 fucking days. Yeah, so I made a video.
Shit, wow.
Yeah, they figured it out. Somebody on Reddit figured it out. And then, of course, you know, Nick Trigilli and all these guys, they started rolling with it. So, you know, I made my statement after Liver King made a statement. And then I realized during his statement, he was still lying. He was just trying to patch one hole with another one. And now he's saying that he's drug-free. I don't believe him one bit. I don't believe it one bit. But, you know, apparently me and Derek did free publicity for him because he's even more popular now than he used to be.
Is he really?
So good on him. Yeah, apparently. Yeah,
no way.
Dude. Yeah, good on him. And that's the funny thing about the internet. That's the funny thing about the internet, right? You can lie through your teeth about not taking steroids, and then you get exposed, And all you need to do is one like half-ass apology video and people forgive you.
Well, the fact of the matter is that we want to believe what really drives us and suits us, you know? And if you believe that this person is natural because it gives you the hope that you can someday.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm just like, you know what? You just, yeah, sure. Believe it, you know? If it makes you feel more fulfilled and makes you more enlightened in some sort.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but I'd rather have you, believe in something else that gives you more meaning, and that it's, has a bigger a group of people that follow it, like a religion, for example. I think a religion can do you a lot better than than following the Liver King. Can give you a lot more meaning in life than following the Liver King. But hey, man, it is what it is. If people still want to follow him, that's fine. Or call me a rat or a snitch, or I've seen all those comments pass by. I think more people. Last year's news.
Right. I mean, the comments that we see are always the hate one. I'm pretty sure that more people support you than not. I'm very confident.
Yeah, so what I realized, like, this happened right before I went to the Olympia, right? And then, dude, you should have seen my comment section. People literally wanted to kill me, apparently. And then I go to the Mr. Olympia and I walk around LA and everybody was like, oh, wait, you're the guy that, had, forced Liver King to come clean. I said, well, yeah, to a certain extent. So people are actually happy, or at least people in our industry, even people that realized that he got exposed, but they didn't know that the emails came from me initially. Man, you should have seen what people said about the guy, like the most derogatory terms without knowing that, I was somewhat involved in helping him get exposed. So I think the general consensus, at least in the fitness community, is that he's a POS. So I really wonder what his audience is. It's probably all general population, with that really didn't take care of themselves. So that's why they needed the carnivore diet to kind of get fixed.
No, exactly. I'm sure it's just those who really, truly use the carnivore diet. I mean, if you relate to it, then right.
It's okay. But, if you want to have realistic goals, look at Paul Saladino, his business partner. I'm not sure if they're still involved, but Paul Saladino, I think he's drug-free. And he also follows this super extreme carnivore diet. Right. But he's a super lanky guy with a little bit of leathery skin and completely drawn out face because he doesn't eat that much carbohydrates, just a little bit of honey, I believe, and some fruits here and there. And that's a realistic goal, right? Almost looking emaciated, similar to how vegans look super emaciated. I think that's a realistic goal of just following the carnivore diet for years on end. But if you add in TRT and you go to the gym and you train hard, okay, then you might end up, looking closer to the Liver King. Yeah. Still.
So
I don't know.
So the Liver King was resilient in basically coming off of PEDs for his health.
Pretty
when
much,
he was under you. Okay. Yeah. I see. Yeah. That was basically the issue.
And that, like, for the guys that remember that email that he sent me, right, with his PED stack, based on his blood work results, I didn't even believe that was true. So when I saw the stack, and dude, I've seen more blood work than most people, in this space, because I always ask for it. And some of my clients, they do it every month. And then you go back 10 years, that's like 120 blood works just from one client, that I see. So he wrote me the stack and I'm like, this can't be right. It must be on something more. So I wanted to inquire, maybe later on he would open up, but we never really got that far. I think he just hired me as a drug coach and to get his IGF-1 levels up, which did come up after some recommendations. Yeah, but I honestly think he had non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which I had myself. So it's easy to recognize.
Right. Yeah. Choline and inositol?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit more complicated. You actually need to come off. You need to. So the liver has stem cells, right? The hepatocytes. They need to recover, but it's very difficult to do when there's super physiological dosages of testosterone in the picture. Now, of course, he was on TRT and a couple other PEDs and then taking MK677 and super high dosages of growth hormone. So I told him, if you get it diagnosed first, because I just speculated, right, based on his blood work results. So get the NAFLD diagnosed, and then if that's the case, you need to come off, right? Set aside your goals to be super famous. Of course, he didn't want to do that, and it's good on me, good on him that he reached his goals of 1 million subs and then becoming so popular within as little as a year. But yeah, I think he got more unhealthy compared to before if he didn't stop with the PEDs. So I really hope he got it addressed because, you don't want to wish any unhealthiness on anybody. But I don't think he did. Maybe now he's getting healthy now that he's off the GH. He's not off TRT though.
Interesting. Can you explain what went on with his lack of response to GH and his IGF-1 levels?
I mean, I'd have to throw a couple TRT clinics under the bus. So if you want a DMCA takedown, then let's go there. But otherwise,
okay.
Yeah, I think, just to make it short, I think part of that is not having good liver health, right? So high dosages of growth hormone are required to bring your IGF-1 levels up if your liver is unhealthy, right? If your IGF-1 production is basically regulated in a couple different ways, right? Growth hormone needs to be elevated. Estradiol plays a contributing role in growth hormone or IGF-1 secretion when growth hormone is high. So if you overdo your arimidex or you overdo DHT derivatives and your estradiol is low, then you can't possibly get the maximum IGF-1 production, even when growth hormone is high. If your liver health is impaired, high liver enzymes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, hepatocellular carcinomas or bilirubin obstruction, right? So you can't detoxify through your gallbladder. Then it's not going to be that high. If you take copious amounts of metformin or berberine or Nolvadex, right? Your IGF-1 levels won't be as high. So if you're doing a multitude of things wrong and your growth hormone potency isn't what it's supposed to be, then you can't get your IGF-1 levels that high. So I think that's saying more than enough. Yeah. Okay. Don't send this guy DMCA takedown, please.
Yeah. It's definitely hard to. I mean, I guess as you said, potentially what it was most likely the liver health, right? But
I think so.
There is that's why
it's so what is this word? Ironic that the guy called himself the liver king, but his liver was not really healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I would assume that he was definitely taking PEDs for a good prolonged period of time. That kind of brings me to a curious question that I have for you, if you don't mind me asking this too. But how were you able to do a cycle that you say is essentially for about 10 years, but still be able to manage your blood work and your health?
Well, I've had several periods where I was unhealthy, obviously, especially during blasts. So a cycle of 10 years, it's blasting and cruising. So I say it's one cycle because you're cycling through the dosages and the drugs. So you start, let's say, just arbitrarily example, let's say you start with 250 tests for a month, and then you build up to 500 tests for a month, and then 750 for a month, and then 1,000, and then you throw in another gram of Primo, right? So that's 1 month on good TRT, and then on a cycle, and then on a full fucking blast where you take a boatload of PEDs, right? Maybe for 1 or 2 months. So the high dose is maybe 4 to 5 months. And then after that, you go back to TRT, whether that's 150 tests or 250 tests, because that's TRT for big bodybuilders, right? That's what we need to sustain the size. So we don't go to clinical TRT, we go to bodybuilder TRT. Then you stay there for 2 or 3 months, right? And then you increase the dose again. And every time you increase the dose, you get more muscle mass. So even though you cycle between, let's say, 250 to 2,000 milligrams steroids in total with growth hormone and insulin and clenbuterol at certain times and, all this other extra stuff, you cycle through all of that over the period of years. Yeah, it's basically one cycle because you never came off. You never recovered your testicular function, your HPTA. There's no natural testosterone production. And even though you take HCG at certain periods of time, it doesn't really count, right? The luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone from the pituitary doesn't go to the testicles because it's not there. The pituitary is shut off. Basically, it's lazy, it's sleeping. 10 years, coma.
Okay.
So it doesn't do anything. So that's basically why it's a cycle. And then staying healthy, just a matter of blood work, organ imaging, eating good, doing cardio, taking the health supplements, and that was a huge learning process for me. So in the beginning, I didn't know. And I've documented all of that on my YouTube channel. So when I had polycythemia, right, super high hematocrit levels, I've documented that in the YouTube video due to boldenone and, high beef intake and doing all these crazy supersets and stuff. And I've documented hyperlipidemia, super high total cholesterol levels and super high LDL levels running the carnivore diet on TRT, no less. So if you want to have an indication of what Brian's blood work looked like, just watch that hyperlipidemia video on the carnivore diet, and you get a good indication. I don't need to post his blood work, just look at mine. I've documented, a protein in my urine. I've documented that. So I've had plenty of health scares. The non-alcoholic fatty liver disease I documented. But I think through perseverance and just, understanding a red flag and saying, like, fuck, I'm unhealthy. Now I need to get this fixed. I don't put my head in the sand. I get it fixed right away. So I don't get long-lasting issues. And a lot of guys still put their head in the sand. And that's how they get unhealthy in the long term, Because you need to manage this constantly. I like that. I like that comment that you made about the glutathione. After going out for partying, one of your podcasts. I love that, dude. That was a great comment. That was fucking good. Because
I was really just joking, but
no, but dude, it works. Like
it does.
If you go partying, especially with recreational drugs, like you really have a good time. You're under so much oxidative stress that you need a high potency antioxidant the next day to kind of make you healthy again. So that's why I really like that, because back then we didn't know, right? When I went to party to all these dance festivals in Holland, we didn't know about injectable glutathione. We only knew about 5-HTP to restore your serotonin balance. And,
right.
Yeah. So the next day you can't take it at the same time, but the next day you can take it, and then you don't feel so down, so low, and so depressed for the next couple of days. After this major high on the dance festival, losing 5 pounds of dancing, and good times, man. Yeah, I used to party quite a bit. So luckily that phase is now behind me. Because taking PEDs and partying hard, that's definitely. It's a bit tricky. TRT, okay, but like a real cycle, no.
I feel like that's the cycle that all of us big bodybuilders go through. Well, not big, but I feel like that's the cycle that a lot of us bodybuilders go through. Like you, Larry Wheels, I know, even Z's and his brother Chess Bra. Larry Wheels was talking about on another podcast that he's taken Special K, but he's also taken like meth and a bunch of other crazy things that I was really surprised to hear. And then as a bodybuilder, just like you've been on. Just like you learn on gear, you just learn that's not it. Take copious amounts of drugs over a long period of time, and you start realizing it just over time. It's like you feel these ups and downs, and you feel like these amazing ups. But then as you keep taking it, the ups just get lower and lower and lower and lower until at some point it just doesn't. It doesn't. You don't even respond to it anymore.
Yeah. Right. So that's why you need to cycle through it. And I honestly learned that through my recreational drug phase. Because, in Holland, it's kind of boring. But then in the summer, you have these huge dance parties, Mysteryland and Sensation and DEF CON. And man, so many great parties. But they would always be in summer. So you have maybe one party every 2 months. And then, I really got into the party scene. And, you can't take MDMA every weekend, obviously. You can't get blastingly drunk every weekend. So you really have to be a little bit more selective on what you do and how you choose your party setup. So during that time, I learned a lot about how to cycle recreational drugs. And then later on, I used that information, on how to stay healthy during drug use when I started experimenting with performance-enhancing drugs. Now, I think my recreational drug phase was like from 15, that's weed, starting there. That's Holland, it's illegal. So you start with weed, and you start looking into the hard drugs or some mushrooms or MDMA or I took meth also. Fuck speed. Very popular in Europe. Yeah, very popular. And cocaine and fuck LSD and all that stuff. Yeah, man, I took it. And then by the time I was like 24, maybe even 23, I was kind of over it. It's kind of like during my university times, Because I went to uni when I was 16 years old. And then I had like 2, 3, 4 years of my life where I didn't really take anything. I really wanted to go into this bodybuilding stuff. And then at 26, I was like, you know what? Let's see what these steroids are all about. So I knew how to do research because I did so much research on rec drugs back in the day. Yeah. And dude, I don't regret that period at all. I had such a blast. I'm not trying to promote it, but I'm happy I got it out of my system, because I see a lot of guys that come here to Thailand and then they want to get into rec drugs because it's so difficult to get back home. But you don't do reg drugs in Thailand, dude. That's a jail sentence. That's very lengthy, or at least a very heavy fine. You know, so that's why I'm happy I got it out of my system when I was in Holland. And I had a blast during those days. Absolutely. So when I see your picture sometimes on Instagram, you're going to these raves, I know exactly. Yeah, I know exactly how fun that is. Yeah, I know exactly how fun that is. Yeah, that was
definitely back in my day. Now I'll still go to events,
time,
but
right?
it's not the same, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, it's just. Yeah, so do you notice like when you just start going to these raves, these parties, like because you probably went a decade after I went, and then in the beginning you get this like tight community feeling. Everybody's nice, everybody's happy, but then the longer you rave, you get a little bit jaded, and you feel that the community isn't so much fun anymore. Like, did that happen to you as well?
I think it's more so just any experience you have, it's freshest when you first have it. And then as you keep having it, you get less stimulated, you get less stimulated. The fact of the matter is when you're in a relationship as well, oxytocin, all those hormones, when you first see each other, the honeymoon phase, but then as you keep knowing each other, you get used to each other. And that's just how the world works. The only way that you overcome that is mentally, right? So I've just seen that happen with me with any type of recreational drugs I've used, any type of partying or going to events. And now the only reason I do actually go to these events is one, because like say I have a new group of friends and or my old group of friends and I just want to spend time with these people because I actually never have any free time because I'm just doing this social media work all the time.
Yeah, it's full time. I know.
Or my favorite part, and honestly the most important part, is because it's like freaking like 36 hours of cardio. Where I do like 60,000 steps over the course of a whole weekend while just hanging out with my friends. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, I knocked out my cardio for like almost a week by just going to this event. So you knock out two birds with one stone.
Yeah. And probably during this time, you only drink water and you can barely eat, right?
I haven't drank alcohol in 6 years, and I smuggle protein bars or protein powder into the festival. So I have I still up on my protein synthesis every 3 to 5 hours.
That's good.
And then if I'm taking any like substances these days, I limit it just to caffeine. I have an Adderall prescription, so I'll take maybe 5 milligrams, a quarter of it. Or to be honest, I'll probably just do like a microdose of like shrooms or a microdose of like
LSD. So you get into the groove, you can feel the music.
Yeah, just to get into the groove. But that's essentially like, other than that, it's, I guess you could consider that just enhanced sober in a way.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, if it's a microdose, you're a little bit stimulated. I think that's reasonable. Like for us, like we can't miss a day, right? You can maybe miss like one day out of the month that you're not productive and not producing content. So going to these parties and just going all out, like before social media days, when there was not too many cameras that you know, like people start taking pictures of you, like, oh, look at this guy, he's like having a little bit too much fun, right? And then we'll end up on social media. Yeah, that's what you got to think about also nowadays. But back then when you were anonymous and just having fun, you could just do whatever. And if you're not that busy, I would need a week to recover, dude, of these parties. Yeah. Like I Love Techno in Belgium, there was like 2 days.
Oh,
so you bring... Bro. Yeah, you bring your fucking your tent. You're out on this field, and then there's like multitude of and it goes nonstop, so you can't even sleep because the music is so loud. and then depending on how the wind is, you might hear techno, and then the wind comes this way, you hear trance, and then the wind comes the other way, you hear hardstyle. Yeah, dude, you're just laying in bed like, maybe you should go back to the party. Yeah. Oh man, good times. Yeah. Great times.
That's so funny, bro. That's so funny.
I missed it a little bit, but that 1 week of recovery, I don't miss that at all. I'm too old, so I probably need 2 weeks to get back from it.
This is so funny that we're talking about this because you're going to see me being dragged to EDC here in about a week.
Oh, yeah, go
Which
man.
means, dude, EDC is the one festival that I never want to go back to because it's an all-nighter. You don't get home till like overnight, 9 a.m. Yeah. It's just, dude, it's the worst because I feel like there's nothing that affects me worse than that much of a change in my circadian rhythm.
Yeah, it messes you up for sure. You up. So those parties are all we had back in Holland. And then slowly Mysteryland moved to the day parties at some of the bigger parks. But we used to have only at night. And they would have them in the big convention halls, maybe 9 rooms or 12 rooms. and you get completely lost because you have no idea where the fuck you are. And then the sun would come up, right? And then you realize that everybody's very, very ugly after a whole night of take you, the face is all contorted and stuff. You know how bad it is. Those sunglasses don't help, dude. You need to wear a full face mask.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then you would have to go home at like 8 or 9 in the morning, either by car or public transportation, and then man, you're wrecked. You're wrecked. So yeah, those day festivals are certainly a lot better. You have them here in Thailand too, but I don't want to go. It's
you don't even want to go to the day festivals?
No, because there's like in Thailand, it's I don't know, the crowd is a little bit different, and even though a lot of people here on MDMA also, there's so much police, and they love to catch a foreigner. So even if you don't take anything, you'll still get pulled in for questioning. So I don't even want to take a risk or take the chance. This is sit, at some sort of police booth, having to pee and stuff, and then there's nothing there, but then you still waste an hour of your time. You get drilled with questions, and then, you got to be careful.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, it's okay.
If you ever,
that phase is behind me anyway. Yeah.
Well, regardless, if you ever come down to LA, maybe I can drag you to another event so you can re-experience your days.
I might swing past LA this year. Yeah, I'm gonna do a bigger tour in America because I had so much fun last year. So I want to go to Ohio and Florida for the Swiss. There's a Swiss convention, it's like for TRT and athletes and stuff. So that's in Ohio. And then after that, I want to go to the Olympia in Florida. And then either before Ohio or after Florida, I want to go to Las Vegas. And then I might as well go to LA and Vancouver to meet with Derek and the guy from Star Wars Theory, which I just had a podcast with. So they invited me to kind of hang out and chill out in Canada. Yeah, see what that's like. Yeah, it's going to be so cold.
And if you guys want to help fund the podcast as well, you can purchase something from Young LA Clothing or Huge Supplements and use code Nyle as well, and that'll also help fund the podcast. So I want to pick your brain on this, since this is a personal friend of mine, and this is what I was talking about earlier.
Right.
But I just find it so intriguing, and so many people in the industry do as well. But I feel like a majority of people on the internet just tell him that just call him out and say that he's not natty. And this is my friend Josh Manoi. And he's on Instagram.
That's one of the pics.
Yeah, please.
One of the pics that you posted, right? Let me check.
Very likely, yeah.
I think. Where are you?
I'm gonna wait till you check, and then I'll tell you how I feel about it.
So that's this guy, right?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Check out his page. Check out his arms. My boy Josh is crazy, dude. He's got
Aiden Christo.
AK-47s. No, Aiden is. That's my editor. It's the other.
Oh, it's your editor.
Josh.
Okay, wait. Joshua J. Blaze. Joshua Manoi. Yeah, I'm sorry, Josh, but I would find it highly unlikely that you're not running something. Yeah. So I mean, it looks great.
He looks amazing.
Let's not take away from this guy. The hard work is still involved, but like what I usually do is I go to the upper glutes because that's like the first injection site that everybody uses, right? So glute shots incoming, guys. So you see here, like he's straight at top to bottom. So, man, I'm zooming into another man's ass. I don't see any clear injection sites. Now that doesn't mean he doesn't take orals, but he has upper glutes. There's no pins. So maybe this guy's just doing orals only. He doesn't have the thickness that you would otherwise associate with steroids. Like what is his weight? What is his height?
Yeah. So here's my spiel. I didn't believe he was natural. And I'm still, a little on the edge, but basically he's a natural bodybuilding pro. He's competed in the show and won it, tested by them, whatever test they gave him. And then also he did this thing with Larry Wheels. He got 2 blood works done. And the second blood work he did with Larry Wheels. And they went on a call with Merrick Health. You're with Merrick as well, right? Yeah. They went on a call with Merrick, and the doctors at Merrick went over his blood work for that hour. And during that time, from what the doctor said, there were some suspicions in there, but the way that the doctors went over his blood work had convinced me. Now I am now like more convinced that he is natural than I'm not.
Okay.
Which is mind blowing. Either that, or he's really, really good at lying because he really knows what he's doing. Like he really knows what he's doing. He just happens to get his blood work at the perfect time where somehow he just suddenly just jumped off some oral, but still he looks phenomenal even though he's not on anything, and his LH and FSH seem to be in a reasonable range. Like it's like, I'm even surprised that he still looks like that when his LH and FSH still like are in range, if that makes sense.
So you can actually keep your LH and FSH in range if you're young, and you supplement with Clomid or Enclomiphene, a serum, which we usually use during PCT. But if you use that on cycle, you can actually improve your lipids and sustain your LH and FSH levels. I mean, you're talking to the guy who helps people at the World Championships level beat the drug test over and over and over and over and over again. So there's so many ways around it, dude. It's not even funny. So blood work only gets you that far. You can easily change the blood work parameters if you want to. And dude, I can literally do that for you within a week. And then there's a doping test, which you can also beat easily, unless it's random. So if you have a doping test on the day of the competition, dude, you can literally pull drugs out at certain periods of time and use, compounds to speed up the metabolism, or at least ensure metabolism, and then test drug free and still look somewhat good. Now, could it be natural? Of course he could be natural. Like there's guys with super good genetics out there and that look very, very impressive when they're lean. But growth hormone isn't detectable unless you go to MMA, where they really check your serum growth hormone levels. And there's so many compounds which aren't detectable. I've got 2 videos on my YouTube channel called the WADA approved doping stack with all kinds of drugs which are not on the list. And you can easily use those, and they're not tested for it. Nobody pops for these drugs because they don't have the detection methods for it. Maybe not this year, maybe next year. So that is, you can beat the drug test, but it doesn't mean that he's not natural. But you would have to lock him up for 3 months in a gym with a private chef and do drug testing every month and blood work every month. And then if he still looks the same after a month of having the best gym and the best chef and the best sleeping mattress available, and he still looks the same, okay, 100%. 100% is natural. I would stamp him, I give him a tattoo like Vigorous Steve approved, 100% natural. And he can walk around for life until he starts to go to the dark side. But it's possible, but it's rare. But the funny thing is, like with these naturals, like they're so good that they get popular on Instagram. So we think that a lot of these naturals are fake, even though they're so few between. But because they look so good, they get popular. So we think there's a lot of them, but actually it's only like 0.00001% of the population, because all the other naturals that don't look good, obviously they don't get popular because they don't have a crazy physique. Right. So it's you get a little bit of a weird confirmation bias that way through social media, because it's, if you look good, you'll go somewhere. I don't think.
Do you know Doug Miller?
Yeah, Jerk Miller. That's how he. I'm sorry, Dougie. Yeah, but that's what everybody called him, right? So Doug Miller, I really love his physique. He looks fucking crazy. Not a single injection site. Not a single injection site on his body. Like his glutes are feathered top to bottom. His shoulders feathered, lats feathered, not a single spot in his quads. But Doug Miller retired in 2004 when Austrian testing became available. That's just a correlation, but it's a very suspicious correlation.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you can see that with all the guys that used to compete in Muscle Mania. Once the pro hormones became banned, then all of these guys retired. And pro hormones were steroids, but they weren't on the doping list because they didn't recognize the molecules, but they were testosterone derivatives. So, it's very suspicious to me. But, like Mike O'Hearn and Doug Miller would probably be the best naturals on the planet if they were drug.
Oh, for sure, dude. For sure.
Yeah.
Doug Miller is my favorite natural.
I like those guys. But to be fair, like both Mike O'Hearn and both Doug Miller, they look super healthy. right? They both got kids. They both got successful businesses. So in that sense, you got to respect them, because they accomplished a lot. But yeah, there might be a little bit of PEDs in the picture, which I guess nobody will ever figure out the truth, because they're either supernatural or they're very good at lying. But that's okay, man. I mean, it's up to the audience to decide who they want to follow and who they want to support. And if you feel somebody's lying about what they're doing and taking and being disingenuous, then don't use their discount codes, don't buy their products, don't that's why they can retire themselves, because the income dries up.
Right.
But somehow it doesn't happen. So
okay, I have another friend. These are all like public things that they've posted on social media, so I don't really. I'm pretty sure this is okay that I'm asking these questions. Hopefully, if not, I'll ask them later.
Otherwise, we'll cut it out to get the TMC head takedown.
Yeah,
take that clip out right now.
Yeah, but they post this on their own TikToks and stuff. So my friend has created a small controversy on TikTok because he was natural and then he decided to take enclomiphene and HCG in order to boost his natural testosterone. Yeah. And he boosted it from 500 nanograms per deciliter to 1,100. So what I'm wondering with you is like, considering like the definition of natty in the industry, would you consider that natural? Would you consider him still natural now that he's come off of it too?
No, because it's you're boosting beyond your natural ability, and both of those drugs are on the doping list. So if you go to the WADA doping list, the HCG and Clomid is banned. So if he wants to test natural, he needs to stop his HCG 5 days before the drug test, and Clomid 45 days. Then he's natural. But you won't lose any muscle mass over that, because you can run the HCG up 5 days or 7 days before the drug test. So, it's you could still look significantly better and have higher testosterone levels all the way through. But if you go from 500 to 1,100 with pharmaceutical drugs meant for fertility, not natty, baby, not natty. Yeah. But,
do you think?
But I will say this: his testosterone production, even though it's higher than before, it's still coming from the testicles. So if you just test him for his testosterone to epitestosterone ratio, he's going to pass, because his testosterone to epitestosterone ratio is produced within the testicles, and that ratio is exactly the same as somebody who's still natural. He would fail on Clomid and HCG, but his epi to testosterone ratio would still be good. So if you take the HCG and the clomiphene out, even though his testosterone levels are high, his epi testosterone levels are also high. And then on the test, technically, he's natural, but we know that he's not. Yeah. The next logical step would to inject testosterone like a man, like a real man does.
You fucked me up, bro. Would you say that increase from 500 to 1,100 nanograms per deciliter would create a substantial difference in look? Or
yes, 100%, 100%. Because like when you go in for blood work, you go in the morning, right? You want your highest reading in the morning, so you go at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and after that, your testosterone levels kind of decline. So if you check 500 in the morning, maybe you're 400 in the afternoon, maybe 350 later in the day. Right? That's quite a big fluctuation. But if you're on Clomid and HCG, those have an active life of multiple days. So you're always on 1,100, whether that's in the morning or in the evening. So the difference between 500 or 350 to 500 during the day to 1,100, that's not just double, that's triple during certain periods of the time. So now you're in this between double to triple anabolic state most of the day. So yeah, it will make a significant difference. That's why guys on TRT that run 100 milligrams a test, going from 500 tests under serum to 1,000, huge difference, right? Everything improves, right? Their well-being, their muscularity, quality of life, all that stuff. Yeah, it's a huge difference. So yeah, sorry, buddy, not natural.
What about water weight pertaining to, say, estradiol, or like, since he's increasing his testosterone to 1,100, and then he was previously at 500, what would you say, appearance-wise, aesthetically, is like the difference? Because sometimes I find that when people jump on a lot of tests, they may get bigger and their body composition may improve over the course of time, but some of them tend to look more watery and bloated to me. And in aesthetic wise, sometimes I feel like, you know, the ones that ended up with a lower test but also had lower water weight over the course of time just seem to look more aesthetically pleasing.
So do you feel that my face is aesthetically pleasing now compared to before? Now that I'm off the testosterone but still running HCG and recombinant FSH, I think it's a bit better.
You look pretty good to be.
Thank you, sir. So the water retention can come, but it's not a given if you run Clomid and HCG, even at higher dosages, because let's say your testosterone doubles, right? You can assume that your estradiol also doubles, but that's not always the case. Some guys, the estradiol comes up 10%, 15%. Other guys, the estradiol comes up 3 times. So let's say you go on this protocol, right? HCG and then clomiphene, and you see that your testosterone goes up. Also check your estradiol. Also check your SHBG levels. Do your full hormone panel, because you need a full picture of what's going on. Because some people say, okay, I get water retention. It must be the estradiol. So now I need Arimidex or letrozole, right, to bring that down. And then they tear a bicep, right, Joe? Joe Statics, he overdid the letrozole, which I told him many times, don't do that because you'll hurt yourself. Anyway, so he was very worried about estrogen, right, on a little dose of TRT. It wasn't the estrogen, it was the actual TRT. Testosterone promotes water retention also. So, you know, that's why I always tell people, okay, if you suspect that your estradiol is high, go prove it with blood work. And don't be scared of needles because you're already, you know, taking the HCG and you have to inject that too. So draw your blood, get it tested, see what's going on, and then make the assessment on what you need to do. Maybe you need to bring your body fat levels down. Maybe you need to increase your zinc intake, or maybe you increase supplemental diindol methane. You know, but in case of Clomid and clomiphene, that's probably not going to work because you produce a lot of estradiol and esterone. And diindol methane helps with the balance between. So when you take exogenous testosterone, it only converts into estradiol. And then you could take diindol methane, just an over-the-counter supplement with, you know, an extract that you find in broccoli or cruciferous vegetables. This converts the estradiol to estrone. So now this estradiol burden is less, right? A better balance between the two estrogens. But if you take Clomid and HCG, you probably produce adequate or equal amounts of estrone and estradiol. So in that case, it wouldn't work. So maybe you need a pharmaceutical aromatase inhibitor in the form of Arimidex, Aromacin, right? But do blood work first, because if your estradiol is fine, and your testosterone is high, your estradiol is high, and you take Aromacin, and your estradiol is now 0, guess where your libido is? It's in the trash. It's gone. You know? And why raise your test when you're not going to put it to work, right? I mean, you know, you need some estradiol for the libido to be stellar. So this is how I see a lot of guys fuck themselves up. You know, they suspect that the water retention comes from the estradiol, which is not the case. It might just come from the mineral retention, from the increased amount of testosterone, because you hold more electrolytes, more sodium, more potassium. That's what we call bodybuilding. Eh? You go on PDs, it's from the waist down, it's good, but from the neck down, it's good, but from the neck up, you know, maybe you get some side effects. Did you notice that the same thing? Like at one point you went on cycle, right? Like you were natural for quite a bit and then you went on cycle. Did you notice that your face got more puffy and it was just more difficult to manage? Yeah,
absolutely. I was definitely below 300 before I ever did my first injection, because I did orals first before I did anything else, because I didn't know what I was doing. I was accepting these from a coach. In order for me to get a pro card. Yeah. So basically no knowledge. And then I was under a coach and etc. And this was a coach.
You got your pro card on orals only?
Yes. On halotestin and I think it was Winstrol.
Dude.
Yeah. Hey, Winstrol and 10 milligrams of halotestin.
That's no joke, man. I mean, didn't even inject anything. You get a pro card. I mean, that stands for something. You did everything wrong and you still got a pro card. That's insane. Dude, I know guys that struggle for 10 years to do everything right and they don't get a pro card. So more power to you, you know. It's the wrong way, but you still got something out of it.
It's definitely a wrong way.
Yeah. Right. So guys, for the young guys out there, that's not a reason why you can do an oral only cycle, because Nyle got his pro card on an oral only cycle. It doesn't happen for everybody. Trust me. There's more horror stories out there than success stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your test was like 300 and then you went on TRT?
Yeah. And then I went on TRT, and then I think what was my first blast? I think it was 250 or 300 test. And man, I just,
yeah.
So much water, but then all the muscle bellies, just full muscle bellies, because I remember being flat and fat, and yeah, it was a nice quick transformation.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure you felt a lot better also. Yeah. Did you ever do like a proper PCT since that time to kind of see if your testosterone levels would come back, or the social media pressure is just too high that you can't really afford to come off?
I tried a lot of things for an entire year. Okay. So 2020 is a special year for me. And this was the year where 2019, I actually decided to not do I was enrolled in UCSD to do my master's in biomechanical engineering, because I wanted to try to mix some sort of kinesiology and bodybuilding into like my mechanical engineering degree. And then a week before, I realized, dude, fuck school. I hated working as an engineer. I'm just going to do social media. I don't know what it is.
Exactly.
But yeah, so a week before I dropped out, I didn't have any money. I was struggling. 2020 came along. 2020 came along, and I had, no money. And then I was starting to feel depressed for some reason, obviously, because I got my pro card in 2019, and that's when I got coughed off. And then I was like, what's going on with my body?
Zero test.
Right. I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I tried, luckily, because COVID was happening, I didn't have too much external things to worry about, except for the fact that I just needed to make some money to live. But it was kind of the perfect timing, because we were also getting checks from the government. So while I wasn't having any money trying to figure this out, I was at least being kept afloat. And so this is where I tried things such as the carnivore diet, in order to see if it would raise my testosterone, if that's part of the issue. Is it something that I'm consuming? Try the carnivore diet. Little did I know, my liver enzymes were highly, highly elevated, because I've been running orals for a long period of time without anything else. And then I also consumed vitamin C while I was on the carnivore diet, which you should not do, because that increases iron. And so over a long period of time, not knowing what was happening, this led me to have what resembled as fatty liver disease. I don't believe it actually got to that point, but they did require me to get a biopsy, because my liver enzymes were so high and they weren't going down, and all these things.
They did a biopsy?
They required me to do a biopsy. Luckily, I never actually had to do the biopsy.
Oh, thank God.
Because I was able to.
What your doctors did. That's not necessary at all.
Yeah.
Man.
Definitely.
That's not necessary at all. You do an ultrasound and a fibro scan. It's just like a little hammer, like a little jackhammer they put on your ribs, and it taps 10 times to see what the echosynicity is with this little, and then they can determine how much fibrosis and liver is in, or fat is within your liver. A biopsy, man. Some of these doctors are crazy, dude. Oh, your kidney markers are elevated. We need to do a biopsy, and then they take this needle that, man, it's biggest harpoon ever. So it's good you didn't do that, man.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I tried HCG and some PCTs as well, and I still felt depressed afterwards. So after getting my blood work done and realizing how low my testosterone was, I finally. Then I was like, I had a phobia for needles and heights. Those were like my my biggest fights.
The two big ones.
Yeah. And I don't know. I realized that if I want to do bodybuilding, if I want to feel good again, if I just want to follow my passion, I'm going to have to at least be able to do TRT. And so I tried it, and I felt amazing afterwards.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So you do intramuscular shots now or sub-Q?
Intramuscular. I am.
Right. Right. So I helped a couple guys with their first cycle, right, or their first TRT, and they're also scared of injections. So I just tell them do sub-Q, because it's less of a roadblock, a mental roadblock to get over, right? So you just raise the fat, you jab in the insulin syringe, you push down, and you're like, wait, that's it? Pulling out a nose hair is more painful,
Exactly.
So that's why it's so funny, dude. The first time I did an injection when I was 26, I sit there with the needle, right, 25 gauge, 1.5 next to my leg, and I'm just shaking like this. I'm like, okay, okay, it's gonna go. And then I went in, and then of course the skin hurt. And then after that, I didn't feel anything. I'm like, man, I've been so scared for such a long time. And it but nobody can ever tell you that until I made a video about it, what injecting feels like. And then, so all the guys now understand that, okay, piercing the skin hurts because you got nerves there. But then as you go into the skeletal muscle, you don't really feel anything unless you hit a vein, but that barely happens. Then you're like, oh, shit, what is this? Should I still inject? There's tren in my syringe. Should I still inject? Probably not. Otherwise you get tren cough. So now you're on TRT. Did you ever do like HCG or try to come off it afterwards, or you just kind of cruising along
after the TRT?
Yeah.
Well, considering that I already tried HCG and I wasn't really able to get myself up to a level where I didn't feel depressed, I guess I didn't really see a reason for me to come off of the TRT again and try HCG again, especially when I decided that I wanted to be a bodybuilder and do social media. And then, the social media, the whole process of doing the social media for the next 3 years and then also trying to stay shredded and stuff. It just seemed to make sense to just do the TRT.
Exactly. So, and that's 100% true. Like when your business, you turned your physique into a business. So it's 100% understandable that you want to stay on TRT. What I would recommend is add in a little bit of HCG, especially during the off season, to help with the balance between all of these intermediary hormones and to keep your testicular function going. Because at one point you're going to be my age, and then I know I sound like an old fart now, but at one point you want to have kids, and then shutting down your testosterone production and your semen production for such a long time will make the PCT longer and longer and longer. So I was on HCG for close to 1.5 years, like just as a maintenance dose, 250 IUs 3 times per week. And then now that I'm off, my testosterone production is still 600 to 800, depending on when I measure it. And my fertility parameters are improving, right? But let's say I stopped steroids and then I do a PCT and then the PCT fails because I've been on cycle for such a fucking long time. Then my fertility parameters would not come back. So like the guys like you that are on TRT for the business purposes, right? For clarity and looking good and being competitive, I would still run HCG for certain periods of time just to have it on a back end for like 5 years, 10 years from now when you're ready to have kids.
I've been cycling HCG. I've been cycling HCG for 3 months on and 3 to 5 months off as recommended by a Merrick Health.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
Doctor, I think.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. So if you keep it like that, you're on HCG for like half of the year, then at least fertility parameters are good. Like, and I would recommend older guys just to stay on that for the entire year, if you can source it, because I know HCG is a little bit difficult to source and expensive nowadays, but when you want to have kids, then at least the fertility is a much better starting point than coming off doing the PCT and then waiting 9 months. Like it took me 9 months to get adequate fertility without HCG in the picture, and now it's already good after I came off cycle. Right, it's at least at the bottom of the fertile levels. Right. So, of course, you're not thinking about that now, but when you're like 10 years from now, like what's your age right now? How old are you?
Well, to be honest, I'm actually consistently thinking about that all the time, and I'm also someone who's always had. I feel like I'm always someone who hasn't had like the biggest amount of swimmers, so I've been pretty like self-conscious about my fertility consistently over the last several years, which is why I do the whole HCG protocol. But you don't think that it's so you think it's okay to do HCG year round? You don't think it needs to be cycled?
Yeah. So when you go back on my YouTube channel, there's like several videos about HCG, right? And in the beginning, I said HCG doesn't do anything, because I aimed my content for bodybuilders. And what do bodybuilders do? High dosages and a boatload of tren. And in that context, HCG is not going to work, right? Because the negative feedback of the trenbolone and the high dosages of steroids in general, they basically render HCG ineffective. Your testicles will still be raisins and your swimmers will still be zero, right? No matter how much HCG you take. Then as I do this longer and I realize that not everybody is a huge meathead like I was back in the day, then you realize, okay, wait a minute. Yeah, people do have aspirations to have kids. So nowadays I say, it might be better just to add it in as a preventative measure, kind of like a Band-Aid, like you would have astragalus root extract for your kidneys. right? Or maybe a preventative blood pressure medication when you're on a pretty heavy cycle, just to maintain your blood pressure, or a beta blocker to prevent negative heart remodeling, right? I think the HCG is there for testicular health. And even though you don't need it now, if you don't think about kids, or it's not really, you think, I want kids, but maybe 5 years from now, then you just start it now. And then 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you don't have to worry. You're fertile and you don't have to take a whole year off and then do IVF because your swimmers aren't going like this. They're going in circles.
Gotcha. So speaking of fertility, that kind of got me to something that I'm kind of curious about. So classic bodybuilders in Arnold's age, and then also, I don't know if you know of someone named Tren, who is someone on social media, right?
Yeah, he talked about the Nandrolone only cycle, and then everybody started attacking me. What about this, Steve?
that's I wanted to pick your brain on that, because I know there's some aspects about it that I do find some value in. Of course, there's the whole, like, maybe you can be a little hair protective, and then, maybe acne. But I think it's more so those who seem to find a lot of aggression through blast of testosterone, even 500 milligrams or less. I find that the Nandrolone does seem to be one good option there, since it's kind of like your chill man's testosterone.
Right. So let's address that first. So I did Nandrolone only twice. Right? I followed Tian and Clark a little bit back in the day, as a suggestion point. And if you really want to talk about Nandrolone only, he's like the perfect guy to have on, although he's not so popular or not so present on social media. Tian and Clark. Or Ty and Clark. I always mispronounced that. Sorry, Ty. Right. Yeah. My bad. Ty and Clark. So he's the guy that kind of popularized it. I think he got it from Apollo on the GH15 message board, because he was one of the Kevin Lavroni disciples. And he just did Nandrolone for 4 weeks, and then he came off for 4 weeks. And then Nandrolone again for 4 weeks, which means he was always on, but he just didn't want to inject that much. So he'd just do a gram of Nandrolone once a week for 4 weeks, then come off, right? Let it taper down, then start again. So he said it was off, but it's a long-acting ester. Anyway, so the Nandrolone only cycle, I think it's beneficial for guys who've tried everything with testosterone and still get deleterious effects like hair loss or gyno or mood changes or water retention or anxiety or whatever. But that's only a very small percentage of the people. We call those testosterone non-responders, and they might still have a good result with Nandrolone only, but you still need to supplement a little bit of estradiol in, because otherwise, your estradiol is subclinical. So maybe you need HCG or DHEA or actual injectable estradiol. Because when I did a gram of Nandrolone, my estradiol was 12.
Low, right?
Yeah. 12.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'd like it to be at least 30 to 40, for its, beneficial effects, cardioprotection, lipid benefits, glucose homeostasis, libido, obviously, right? So on the Nandrolone only cycle, I noticed that libido was lower. Prolactin was in range, right? The prolactin was super good, right? On Nandrolone only, which otherwise, if you do testin and Nandrolone together, your prolactin might be sky high, and then you really can't get your dick up.
What about ATG though in Nandrolone with prolactin?
So that might increase your prolactin. I've never tried it myself, but I would suspect that maybe you get like 300 nanograms of testosterone and maybe 25 to 40, maybe 50 picograms per milliliter of estradiol when you're on that much Nandrolone. And again, maybe 300 nanograms per deciliter on your test is too much for some guys to handle. So, then you might need to inject actual estradiol valerate or benzoate, which you can get online, but you have to microdose that like 0.05 milligrams per day subcutaneously. And even then, it can raise your estradiol levels quite high. So that's a lot of blood work that you need to do. But Nandrolone will never give you sufficient amounts of estradiol. And some guys feel fine with that. But feeling fine for a decade doesn't mean you're not going to get heart remodeling and plaque buildup and bad lipids and maybe brain issues, right? So just like with steroids, is our regular cycle, with Nandrolone only, there's a lot of micromanagement involved. And if anybody knows all the nuances, then it's Ty and Clark. So, feel free to reach out. Maybe he wants to do a podcast and talk about it. I think he can talk about that for hours, because he's the go-to guy when it comes to this cycle. I just didn't feel manly. I just didn't like it. I didn't feel like a beast. I wanted to feel like a go-getter attitude and good libido and drive. And I felt like kind of sedated. You want to have sex?
Right.
You want to go to the gym? So yeah, I ran it twice and never again. Yeah, it was a fun experiment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I like tests, copious amounts of tests. That's where I feel best.
What do you think about the use of D-bol for methyl estradiol? Estradiol. Can't speak.
Yeah, methyl estradiol. So methyl estradiol isn't bioidentical, right? It's methylated estradiol. And the clinical data is not enough for me to say that it's a good replacement. So even though you have estradiol in the picture somewhat, dude, like the difference between testosterone and primobolan is only 1 or 2 molecules, but you get vastly different effects. The difference between dianabol and boldenone is dianabol is methylated boldenone, right? It's an oral boldenone, but the effects are vastly different. So just one small change on the structure can give you vastly different effects. So you can't say that methyl estradiol gives you the same biological benefits as regular bioidentical estradiol does, because there's no clinical literature to kind of support that. So you could do it, but I don't think you can get away with the same results. I think estradiol valerate or benzoate injections or clomid, N-clomiphene, HCG, right? Those are more sustainable options, or just like 25 milligrams a test once a week to let that convert, right? And 25 milligrams a test against 300 milligrams of nandrolone, which is where most guys feel good at, from what I understand. I think it's negligible. But again, if you don't respond well to testosterone, well, you have to kind of make some hard, adjustments, hard choices. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you thinking about trying it yourself?
No, I actually have a little secret that I just decided not to tell people, just so whenever I had like enough evidence and enough results and whatever, maybe later on, I would explain to people what my experience was. Yeah.
Keep it. Yeah.
I've got some notes I can share with you at some point.
When you're ready to release it, just do it. Yeah. Then people will appreciate it for you. Because what I noticed is I take people on the journey, right, of the experiments, and then people want the results, but it might still take 4 months before the results, the actual protocol is ready. So, so keep it as long as you want to, and then release it. And then when you have the conclusive answer, I get it, man. Totally.
I very much agree with you though on the whole, not feeling very too manly, kind of like meh.
Yeah, it's kind of like man. I'm not sure. That's how I felt. I of course, like in the gym, I was good. Like in the bedroom, I was good, but the incentive wasn't there. And I like a little bit of incentive, internal, intrinsic motivation, right? And I can only get that from testosterone. So, and I notice it myself now, like on HCG, recombinant FSH, my levels are 600 to 800. But if I'm 1,000, 1,500, man, I'm unstoppable, dude. Unstoppable. Business, sex drive, not to the point that I need so much sex that I need 5 girlfriends besides my wife. It's not that bad, but it's better than now, right? It's better than now. And then, productivity and all that stuff is 10 times better. So yeah, if I weren't on HCG and recombinant FSH, dude, I would have canceled on you like 5 times for this podcast. Because I'll be like, I don't feel like it. I'll do it tomorrow, right? You procrastinate fucking hard to get it done. So yeah, it's I like test. I love test. So I get it why people do nandrolone, but if you don't need it, I would say just test is best.
Okay, and then when do you think? This is kind of a little bit more of a random question. When would you say that it is necessary for someone to be on a beta blocker? Like at what extent of say a bodybuilding journey or cycle is it necessary?
So there's a couple of reasons. Like if you have heart disease in your family or an elevated resting heart rate, even though you've done everything already, like the fish oil and the electrolytes and the taurine and the ubiquinol and the daily fasted cardio, and your rested heart rate is still elevated because it's hereditary, right, congenital. Okay, maybe you need a beta blocker just to bring it down. It will simultaneously lower your blood pressure a little bit, take the pressure off the heart while you're taking PEDs that stimulate muscle growth in the heart as well. So you bring the heart rate down to prevent negative heart remodeling, because steroids grow the heart, clenbuterol grows the heart, growth hormone grows the heart, and a lot of the compounds that we take kind of grow the heart. So you bring the heart rate down preventatively to prevent maximum heart remodeling, but you'll still get heart remodeling. So I took a beta blocker on cycle the last couple of years, and I have very clear imaging, right? I have ultrasounds or echoes of my heart on cycle, where I have like equal hypertrophy, so an enlarged heart, not left ventricular, but equal hypertrophy. So the atriums are bigger, and the ventriculars are bigger, and the aorta is slightly bigger. Right? So it just, instead of a heart like this, it got proportionally larger, but maybe 10-15%, like that. Right? The valves close normally. Then I go off cycle. I don't train as hard. I don't take steroids, obviously. I still do my cardio. My heart shrinks back to normal size. Then when I take a similar cycle again with a beta blocker, my heart gets bigger, but less than without a beta blocker. I mean, the luxury of Thailand is that I can do echoes and ultrasounds and imaging every year if I want to. I just have to pay for it. So I got so much data, man. I got so much data on my own body. So you know, for the guys in the Western world where that's a little bit more difficult, I would still advise everybody, you know, if you take PEDs for a long time, just to do an echo on your heart preventatively. And then if it is enlarged, or you have left ventricular hypertrophy, or some of the atriums and the valves are not functioning correctly, then yeah, look into a beta blocker. But putting it in preventatively when you're drug-free, you don't take any steroids, and you worry about heart enlargement, that's probably not a good idea, because beta blockers also lower testosterone levels and sex hormone levels in general. So because it lowers your heart rate, and that's how you get less blood to your testicles to produce semen, right? To oversimplify it. Mm-hmm. So I would do the imaging first and then see if you need it. And you know, you have these protocols online, like a running clen with nebivolol preventatively to prevent your heart from enlarging. It works to a certain extent, but you also inhibit fat loss, because some of the fat loss that comes from clenbuterol comes through an elevated heart rate. So patching one hole with another, yeah, it makes sense, but I would rather see the imaging, you know, imaging first. And that goes for telmisartan, that goes for most of these, you know, prophylactic measures. I see a lot of guys promote telmisartan now, but, you know, do your blood work first and then see if you actually need it, or check your blood pressure first and see if you need it.
But awesome. Thank you for that, man. So, dude, I feel like I could literally talk to you for days. I really feel like I could talk to you for days, man.
I think we should do a part 2, but let's do that when I'm in LA, because I think, you know, the more people that I talk to, I really want to come back to LA and just do some in-person collabs, because that would be amazing. Better.
That would be awesome.
So how we set it up? Like, I'm only like, now we're in May, so let's say, where are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, within half a year.
Okay, gotcha.
How about we do it like that?
That sounds perfect. Let's do it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. Hey, thanks so much for having me on, man. This was absolutely great. Good to talk to you. Good to finally talk to you in real life, or well, at least on the podcast form.
Yeah, no, you as well, man. I think you have a lot of value to bring, not just to the fitness industry, but the entire world. Like, there's not a lot of bodybuilders out there that are talking about the health repercussions of bodybuilding and BDs, and you know, coaches will give people what they want to give people in order for them to become the biggest person on stage or the best person on stage, not necessarily the healthiest. And that's why I think, like, the things that you do are probably amongst the most valuable information out there. So I truly appreciate that. And also,
it's my time to give back, you know. So and then there's not too many of us. There's getting more people in the fitness industry to really bring this information forward. But if we can get like, 10 times more, I would welcome it 100%. Not because it's competition, but because we spread awareness like this, you know. And I'm really looking forward to your journey, man, the next couple of months, and then trying to get a pro win under your belt, because you got a fucking crazy physique. Like, you got that 1% physique, and I think if you dial it in like one time on stage, oh man, people are gonna fall out of their chairs for sure.
Thanks, sure, man. You're blowing up my ego right now. That feels too good. I needed this.
Hold that thought for the competition, because at one point you'll feel like super down and you know, and tired and shit. And then you got to remember that conversation, like, oh man, yeah, I just have to finish this game through, you know,
easily. And you should definitely do more. I think you should definitely do more videos that are not necessarily, but kind of like Natty or Nots for sure. I remember you mentioning something like that, but the thing is, you put such great information out there, but a lot of the stuff doesn't relate to, like, you know, your general population.
Yeah, I know.
And that's how you get seen. So you just got to do some things that are just more related to just what's going on in the industry and in life.
I think so. Yeah, I might have to level up a little bit on my reaction videos. I always feel awkward doing it, but you know, the longer I'm on YouTube, the more I realize that it's necessary because people love that trend story, you know. So yeah, I need to do a little bit more vanilla content. It's hard, dude. It's hard, but I'll get on it.
It is
for sure. Yeah, it is. I'll get on it.
Well, I'm excited to see your progress, man. And
thanks, buddy.
Your rise to the top. So thanks for being on this podcast again.
Thanks for sure. Thanks for having me on. It was good to have you. And I'll see you very soon in LA, buddy.
You as well. So everybody, Vigorous Steve, we can find you on Instagram and YouTube as Vigorous Steve too, right?
Right below. Yeah. Just type in Vigorous Steve. I'm the only guy going by this name. So you'll be able to find me on all the platforms and all the websites and all that stuff. Vigorous Steve, that's it.
Nice. And then if you guys want to support the podcast, best way to support the podcast non-cost is to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and it would mean the absolute world, guys. And then also, if you want to help the podcast,
drop some super chats. That helps a lot too.
So, thanks again, guys. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Sue. Take care, buddy.
I'll see you guys next time. See you, bro. Thanks, man.
Peace. Take care.
Peace.